everyone. My name is Adrienne Garland, and welcome to Sugar Coated. Sugar Coated is a podcast that was born from the notion that for far too long, women and other people who inside felt like they just didn't fit in maybe small or even large ways, had to sugarcoat their words, their style, or in general, their way of showing up in the world. This podcast started out as a dedication to women leaders. You see, I wanted to shine the light on all the incredible work that women do and how they're making an impact. And I still do. But I realized that a key reason that women have struggled, in my opinion, is that they've had to conform to certain cultural norms and ideals, which are inherently designed to keep those outside of the norm from standing out. This has prevented more women from being recognized as the powerful leaders that we truly are. Join me, Adrienne Garland, the CEO and founder of She Leads Media, each week as I dive into raw conversations with some remarkable, badass women that will help you to strip away your sugar coat and go in the direction of your incredible dreams. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sugar Coated. My name is Adrienne Garland, and I'm the CEO of She Leads Media. I am so excited to have Stacey Staaterman as my guest today. I met Stacey a couple of years ago when she attended one of the She Leads conferences, and I was just so impressed by her. And what I always loved about her, and what I always, have like a warm spot in my heart for, is that Stacey would always ask really great questions of panelists, of speakers, and I always took note of that. And so she's doing such great work for people. I want her to be able to introduce herself, let everybody know what her background is, and then we'll just jump into this non-sugar-coated conversation. Welcome, Stacey.
Thanks so much, Adrienne. It's so great to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. And, during this whole crazy time that we're living in right now, so many people are uncertain about everything, right? We are walking on shaky ground. Some people still have jobs, other people are furloughed, other people are, laid off altogether. People have businesses closing down, doing better. It's just everything is different than it was, 60 days ago. So why don't you just give everybody a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do today? And then I have a bunch of questions that, are burning in me, and that I'm hoping that other people will, take value from as well. So please let us know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. So I'm Stacey Staaterman, and I am a leadership coach and a career strategist, and I help people get more out of their work life. And for some people, that means I want to change my job. I've been in a professional track for a while, and I'm tired of it. I want to do something new. And for other people, it means, I really generally love what I'm doing, but I feel a little stuck where I am, and I'm trying to get to the next level. So this, essentially becomes services that I deliver as an executive coach, or partnering with people who are, working their way through their career and trying to move forward or to the left or to the right.
And so I know that your background, you come out of corporate America and advertising. So can you tell everybody a little bit about that? And the reason that I'm asking is because I think sometimes the coaching industry, there's a huge variety of coaches. There's different certifications. There's people that focus in on different areas. And I know that your background and where you came from really informs what you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent more than 20 years working in media and advertising, and I worked for companies like American Express and Meredith Corporation and Time Inc. and a slew of others. And for the most part, I had a really good time. I did a lot of work for many years in the area of ad sales and strategic partnerships. And one of the things that I, when it was never fearful about, even in that career, was making change. And I three times I asked bosses to fire me, and like lobbied for my own demise, if you will, because I was really confident that I had something to do somewhere else that was going to be more fun and better. And so I was okay with the idea of change in those environments. But what I recognized was not everybody was comfortable with that. And yet the changes to the industry really demanded that people get more comfortable with being flexible about what they thought the future might hold and adaptable to the new environment. So that definitely has informed the areas of focus, in my career now. And I've been in my own business now for 6 years. And I do a lot of work with people from advertising, media, entertainment, and journalism, because the industries keep evolving. And now we'll see them evolve even at a faster pace with the COVID-19 crisis. And I know that there's so many smart people in those industry areas and others that just kind of get stuck in their own, beliefs about what's possible. And it really does hold them back. And we need really smart, good people to take us forward, especially given the climate that we're in right now.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I'd never heard that before, that you sort of, asked to be fired, knowing that there was something better at that time for you, or, more evolved, or whatever that is. Where did that spirit in you come from? Like, were you always that type of person that was, looking for more? Because I think that that's a really interesting characteristic.
Yeah, I can't say I really know where it comes from, but at the core, it's about, a certain level of belief that I had in myself that I could persevere whatever was going on. And,
Hmm.
I always was inclined to create and grow and build new things. That was sort of the nature of the work I was in anyway. And I just sort of carried it over into my own professional life. And, for me, it always worked out. I mean, in all three of those occasions where I lobbied for my own demise, I had good results. In a couple of cases, I got bigger roles right in the organization I was in. And in another one, it gave me, the opportunity to exit and start a business, which has been going really well.
Wow. So did you have those characteristics before working? Like, did that show up in your, earlier life, or in school? Or is that something that kind of evolved as you started working?
I think it probably evolved the most once I went to college, and I went to Syracuse University, and it was a huge campus and a place where one could easily get swallowed up because there were so many kids. And for me, it was a perfect climate to just realize that I have to take the lead. I have to take the lead on my own behalf. And I probably was a little bit informed now that I think of it. One of my first semesters at Syracuse, I got a grade that was a little bit lower than I had anticipated it being. And when I really looked into it, I was like 1 point from getting the better grade. And I went in and had a conversation with the professor. And, in hearing, my perspective on it, the professor was like, oh, this is probably easy to move up a point or two to get you where you want it to be. And
Wow.
that took a certain chutzpah, I think, at the time, because I was,
Yeah.
18 years old or something and doing something like that. But I think the more experience I got in business, the more I could see, you don't really go anywhere by not speaking up and being comfortable speaking up, especially as a woman, because that's something that oftentimes women aren't always comfortable with and haven't really been allowed to be comfortable with. It's always served me well, and I think it's very much now part of how I work with my clients, whether they're male or female, to think about the work of self advocacy, because if we don't do it for ourselves, who's going to lift us up?
Yeah. I love that story on so many levels. First, for standing up for yourself and, going in. And I mean, I'm sure you didn't do it to get your grade changed. You just wanted to understand, was there anything that you could do?
Yeah, I
And
don't even think I knew I could get the grade change. It was just like sort of an eye opener, little moment for sure.
yeah, which for like a different audience, and I have a son who's in college, and I have another teenage son who's in high school, and I always tell them, like, look, if you didn't get the grade that you wanted, or, you're not getting exactly what it is that you want, at least go talk to somebody. Because even if you don't get the grade changed or whatever it is, you're going to learn something, and you're going to realize, oh, maybe I needed to focus in on this area a little bit more instead of just letting it lie. And it's something that I always also did for myself. I didn't just let things lie. I didn't just take things as they were given to me and just, said, oh, well, that's it. And I think that that is such a great, a great action to take, no matter what it is. And, you don't want to take it to the extreme where every single grade you get, and if you're trying to get better, you don't want to take it to the point of being annoying. But it's just something that I think is so important for teenagers to do, especially like, women teenagers, and also women especially. Don't just accept the no or the grade. Like, definitely explore. And I love that so much. And I think that that's something that, and I'm projecting, but I think that's something that you would probably do as well if you had a client that came to you with that issue. Can you talk a little bit about the, who you work with and what types of issues or challenges people come to you with?
Sure. My typical client is somebody who's had a lot of success in the past, and they may be 15, 20, 25 years into their career. And for whatever reason, they're at a stuck place. They may be stuck because they can't figure out, what to do next, because maybe they've hit a wall in terms of the direction they're trying to go up or elsewhere. Sometimes they're stuck because they're feeling overwhelmed and overloaded because they have a lot of other obligations outside of their work, and they're trying to be, great on the job and great at home. Sometimes, they've lost their job. They've gone through some kind of contraction in their business, and they've been part of a layoff, or they've been fired. So typically I'm dealing with people who, most of the time up until now, they've known how to navigate. And one of the things that's changed a lot in terms of job searching, particularly over the last 5 years, is just the tools and techniques have changed. For many people who are maybe, 40 plus or 35 plus, there's been, a different way that we went about looking for jobs and getting our next jobs. And there was a lot of influence that other people had in the way opportunities came to us, or the way that we were able to make sure that we closed a deal and got that that offer. And we have, the internet, and we've got a lot of behavior in the job searching realm that has been informed by how the world of dating has changed. We sort of forget that now, dating involves people looking each other up online before they actually have dates, even if it's not because they've met through a dating site. We just do a lot of advanced research online about pretty much everything from dates to handbags to, hotel rooms. And that same behavior is translated into job seeking. And so recruiters and hiring managers are doing an incredible amount of looking online at potential candidates even before they have one conversation. And that's very strange for people, because we have this expectation, especially for those who are a little more, further along in their career, that we're going to have a chance to talk to somebody. And of course, we want to have that happen, but we have to have a really good story, a clear narrative, a clear value proposition before we even have one conversation. And it's about so much more than just a resume nowadays.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much to unpack there too, because it really is, you almost have to be your own personal marketer, and you have to also be super objective about how people are viewing you and the things that you are saying and posting, and just the persona that you're putting forth online. You need to do an audit of that to make sure that whatever the message is one that you want people to receive. Because I can just imagine, everything is online, and if there's anything out there that just smells negative, then I'm sure that these employers are just on to the next, because there's so many people out there, and it's just going to get more and more discerning, I think. So, wow.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that even more damage, almost as damaging as any negative things that could be discovered out there, it's also being absent. When people go to a LinkedIn profile and it looks like it hasn't been updated in 5 or 10 years, it feels a little bit like you're absent from your professional life, which of course is not true, but that is what we glean from what we can discover. So I am always talking to people about, when was the last time you had your headshot updated? When was the last time you took another look at the narrative that you have at the beginning of your LinkedIn profile? When was the last time you posted a content or engaged with people on LinkedIn? And it doesn't just have to be LinkedIn. Twitter can also be very effective, but people are looking for evidence of your value before they have a conversation. And that's a hard thing for people to acclimate to if they've always had this other tradition of, I'm going to get in, I'm going to have a great meeting, great interview. I'll, woo them with my, charisma. And we all want that to happen, and it will happen. But this other stuff now can be a tremendous roadblock because there are so many applicants for so many things. It's so much easier to apply for a job nowadays because of the online platforms to submit applications. And so there's this overwhelming volume of data that the hiring side has to deal with. There's so many applicants. There's so many people that are interested that it's hard for them to parse through it. And I saw this on the hiring side for years when I was working at American Express. They had a very elaborate system to receive applicants, and it was not really perfect. It's still not really perfect. And it's not really just that company. Any company will tell you that the applicant tracking software systems and so forth, they're not really doing a great job of identifying the best candidates. So I always had to, on the hiring side, do some additional legwork on my own. And if I was looking for somebody that I knew was in that pile, I had to request them. So I do see that sometimes people have leaned on the crutch of online job applications to solve their problem. But it's kind of like going to a casino and saying, I'm going to sit at the slot machine and I'm just going to play pennies on the slots for the whole 4 hours I'm here. Yes, you might win, but how long will it take?
Yeah.
As opposed to getting some skills, going to play 21 at the 21 table.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Whoa. Yeah. Gosh, it is a brand new world, and we all need to, because we never know, what situation we're all going to be in. So we really do need to know about all of this. And I would also say that given all the technology and everything too, that there is something to be said about having a strong network so that perhaps you can rely a little bit more heavily on your personal relationships rather than an applicant tracking system. That's probably an even better piece of advice, right? Is to have this strong network to perhaps, go around that, or at least have that work in your favor.
Yeah, no, 100%. The network is ultimately the thing that for most people, especially experienced people, is going to make the difference in terms of compensation, in terms of so many things, because your network is going to help you present in a better way, whether they surface you to a hiring manager or they just make a direct connection. The endorsement of somebody else is always certainly much better than just something that's gone through an online application. What people miss on the networking side, though, is that there's often a mismanagement of your network, of somebody's network.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, have created our network over time. And so people have an association with us about certain skills. Oh, so-and-so is an expert at this, and you've always done that. And they're well-meaning, but if you don't tell your network what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go, they will put you back in the same box you came out of.
Yeah. Oh.
And so as many people are thinking of making pivots or shifts, or they're tired of something, it's imperative that you tell your network, especially your really inner circle people, what you're trying to get done, because otherwise they really don't know how to help. And they're so well-meaning, but they're going to point you into the same old, routes that they've known you from. And it's really imperative for the job searcher to prepare their network to help them do the job.
Yeah.
And make them part of the process. And then also to just expand one's network. I mean, if you're going to work in a different area of business, it's imperative to create some relationships in that other area of business and get to know who the players are, and don't be afraid to connect with them, and be open to learning and being curious about what you can learn from other people to kind of keep moving down into that direction that you're ultimately trying to land in.
That's such great advice. It really is. And I think that we could probably get into the details around, how do you go about connecting with people that might be in a completely different area that you're interested in? And like, how do you make those connections when things are online and you can't meet people, for coffee or something like that? But maybe we save that for another conversation where we talk really tactically, because I think that a lot of people could benefit from some of that advice if you'd be willing to offer that. I have two other areas that I kind of wanted to go down with you. And the first thing I would like to actually understand is like, what is happening now? Who are the clients that are coming to you, or even the clients that you were working with? Like, obviously without revealing any personal details, but what are some of the things that are surfacing that are on people's minds, and how are you guiding them?
Sure. Great question. There's a bunch of stuff going on. So there is one misconception I think that's out there, which is there is no hiring going on. And that's not true. There definitely are industry areas that are on pause and have made cuts, obviously, and we've got huge unemployment rates, but there's still lots of areas of business that are looking to expand and need to expand. And if you've been in an area of business that has contracted and you're out of a job, you may want to look in these other areas where there is expansion. But what we know this universally, I don't think there's an industry that's not being touched by what's going on with this very complex crisis. The needs are going to be different, pretty much everywhere. There's going to be new things, new types of skills needed. And for people that really are able to do a couple of things, remain flexible and adaptable with how they look at what happens next for them professionally. We're going to have certainly more contingent short-term work arrangements where people don't have full-time employment, but they may have really good, decent, well-paying contracts for decent periods of time. That's going to be one shift that was already happening, by the way, before the pandemic. There was a big move in that direction anyway. What's happened with the pandemic is just going to accelerate that. But, this is a time where a lot of companies, they don't know exactly what they're going to need yet, but it's a good time to be in touch with them, because so many people are sitting back and saying, well, I'm not going to look for a job right now because nobody's hiring. And so there's actually kind of a little bit of a backwards vacuum, I would say, where a lot of people are hanging back and doing whatever they're doing, watching Netflix. And for the brave, go out there and be empathetic to whoever you're talking to about whatever it is that has manifested in their business. I mean, that certainly is a key part of the message to start any conversation right now is, are you safe? Are you healthy? Is your family okay? And then to move into a conversation, which is, I love what your company is doing. I'd love to be part of the solutions team that helps to rebuild or helps to expand or to help, pivot. We have a lot of businesses that are going to have to convert how they're delivering their service. And maybe they're going to need to, create new services to deal with the fact that we're not going to sit in packed movie theaters anytime soon. But I think this is a really opportunity-rich moment. One of my business crushes, Professor Scott Galloway, who is part of Stern Business School and L2, he posted something the other day and called this the cosmic opportunity moment. And I think he's right on. For people that are bold and can get creative with the way they think about their skills and their value proposition, I think this has got a lot of opportunity for many, many people, even in industry areas where it feels like everything's shuttered.
I love it. And I went to Stern, and when you said Scott Galloway, I was like, I know him. So that is so great to hear. And I didn't hear that he said that, but I have to agree with him. I think the thing that is challenging, not impossible, but challenging is we've been taught how to think. And we haven't necessarily been taught how to be creative and look at things from all different angles and put ourselves in other people's shoes and come up with something brand new. That is sort of not how we've been taught to consider things and think. So just if you do have advice, I don't know, but how can people shift their patterns of thinking so that they can look at something and see opportunity? Because it requires something different in the way that you even frame an issue. Like it's a fundamental change.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think, by the way, the older we get and the more mature in our career we get, we sometimes get a little bit more, rigid in the way we think about some of the problem solving things, and which is counterintuitive because by the time you're mid-career, you've likely had a lot of experience problem solving, but we're also very quick to shut down the possibility, oh, that's not going to work. And we don't sometimes let things percolate long enough. So there's a couple of techniques that I think work really well, because sometimes it's about a matter of, instead of thinking 3 different ways you could go, think of 15. Because the first 3 are going to be the same old 3 you've thought of every time. But the ones that are, the 4 through 15 in the ideas may have something really useful and a nugget. It won't be perfectly formed, and that's okay. But we need to kind of stretch beyond just the 2 or 3 things that we look at to kind of force ourselves to get to that list of 15. We're just not really wired to do that. We're especially if you're from corporate environment, and going to any of those poorly run brainstorm meetings, so many things get shot down in the first
everything
2 seconds.
It's awful. There's
awful.
The dreaded brainstorming meeting that is not a brainstorming meeting.
And the truth is, we all have certain patterns of thinking that are our favorite cards to play, and those cards have worked really well for us for many years. But when the conditions change and they're no longer working, it's incumbent on us to interrupt those patterns. I mean, the irony is a lot of my clients, kind of a nodding back to, the job searching is kind of a marketing job, right? And so I work with a lot of people who are great marketers and have made millions of dollars for companies, and that's their focus in their work. And they have a really hard time doing it for themselves, because often we're just too close to the agenda and too close to the patterns and too close to how quickly we go to, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And this is one of the powers, honestly, of coaching, is that when you have somebody else who's invested in the conversation and the thinking, but not living in the outcome of it, because that outcome is really the client's to own, it's easier for somebody else to make some observations and help to connect the dots a little bit. So I think, that helps to unlock creativity a little bit, to just push beyond, the short list and go for that longer list. And oftentimes even, kind of crowdsourcing, asking a few trusted people, how they view you, where they think your strengths are. We don't do a great job of getting that kind of input from people that we trust, once we're beyond a certain point in life. And that can be really, really insightful information that maybe, you don't even think that's a superpower, but all the 5 people you ask think you're amazing at X or Y. And you just thought that was normal, everyday kind of skills and value.
Yeah.
That's a big blind spot for a lot of people. The most valuable things that we have to offer are often seem like anyone could do it, because it's so easy for us. But, we're not coached necessarily through most, business experiences or career experiences to follow our kind of flow moments and the things that come to us naturally. We remember so much of the hard-won skills, and those become a little more prominent for us. And then we overlook, some of our best assets as a result.
Yeah. There's so much wisdom in that. And it's funny that you're talking about it. I was just right before this call, I have a really good friend who is moving. She's moving from New York to California. And so she's been cleaning everything out. And she just texted me a picture and said, look at what people at my work said about me years ago. And it was like when she's in her 50s now, and it was when she was in her 20s. And it said things like, creative, will always be successful, fiery. And I said to her, those things are so true about you, then and now. Those are those characteristics that are unchanging and unique, that can be the pillars that we then think creatively around. But we don't do it because some of those things, like fiery, right, which is so her, is not always seen as a good skill to have
Right. Yeah.
in
What's the
corporate.
translation? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say to you too, and you brought it up. I think it's good to have an outside or a third party perspective that's not invested in the actual result, but is invested in the creative process. And I'm assuming that that's what you do as a coach as well, kind of help people to get to those 15 things. Because I don't think I could do that for myself.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a creative person.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes, definitely. I mean, oftentimes, and look, I have coaches too, because I can't see it for myself. So it's not anyone's failing or flawed and need the support. I think it's what we've been a little misguided over the years, perhaps for those, especially in corporate life, is that we're supposed to just know everything at a certain point and be able to kind of carry forward without support, especially when you're, in a leadership role somewhere. You're supposed to be the one with the answers. And I think that leaves people, really in a tough spot at times. So I think having a support structure is certainly key to unlocking a lot of things, but especially, creative thinking can come that way, and just having the energy of other people to collaborate with. And I think that's part of what has been so challenging for the work remote arrangements, and some of the disconnection that we're feeling because of the current crisis we're in, because we're as a species wired to want to be with each other, and we get a lot of things out of that experience. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what happens as the crisis resolves, and how we have to adapt and evolve to keep that energy flowing, so that we, can be our best, and be our best as a group and as a company and as individuals.
So, how would you suggest to somebody? It's almost like a two-part question. First of all, I'm curious, how did you identify who you wanted to coach you? That's part A. And then, how would one go about finding a coach that is right for them? Because it seems to me that it's very individual, and you really don't know if it's a good fit unless you actually work with somebody.
Right. It's a great question. So I think in terms of finding the right coach, a lot of it does come down to chemistry. I mean, there may be other things that individual would like to know that the coach had in terms of professional preparedness and background. And, for me, I went back to school, and I, of course, leaned tremendously on my first career and a lot of the things I did at that point. But for me, the credentialing and some of the formalizing of the support I would offer, it was important to me as much as anybody else. And honestly, half the time people don't really ask me that, because they're more inclined to work with me because we have a good chemistry fit, and I have an understanding of a lot of business areas, and that saves a lot of time in my experience to, you don't have to teach me how the world of advertising works. I already know how screwed up it is. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. And I do think that, a lot of people do find that a benefit, to have sort of real world experience with whatever the coachee is trying to resolve. And I know for myself, when I hire coaches, I am looking for people who have traveled the ground that I'm looking to travel, and are not just going to talk to me about it from a theoretical standpoint, because that's what matters for me. I want the authenticity of somebody who really understands the hardships of trying to, go a certain road and can really understand where I'm coming from on a variety of levels.
Mm. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I I like the thought of turning to somebody that's been down the road that you're going down. Sometimes that's not possible, and I know there are coaches out there that are, even if they've not been down that road, they can somehow, really guide you toward where you want to be going. So aside from the chemistry, and I guess I wouldn't even know how to figure out whether you had the chemistry with somebody if they don't have a way for you to get to know them. And the reason that I'm sort of talking around that a little bit is I hired a coach, but I don't know if I would have hired her had she not had a podcast that I listened to and consumed the whole thing. I listened to hundreds of episodes of hers so that I felt like she really knew her stuff. She's like, her personality. It was such a great way for me to almost evaluate whether I thought she would be a good coach for me or not. And so then I hired her as a coach, and she was amazing. But if somebody sort of doesn't have that way of getting, putting themselves out there and getting to know you getting to know them, sorry, like, how can someone, are there questions to ask? How do you kind of determine whether this coach is going to be good for you short term, medium term, long term?
Right. And it's a good question. It really does eventually come down to some level of interaction between you and the coach, because and coaches, kind of bridge this question in a number of ways. Some of them do complimentary exploratory calls. Some of them do chemistry meetings. Some of them do rely on the fact that they're so discoverable out there with other content that they don't need to spend time with people for them to feel a certain level of comfort. Because a lot of it comes down to, if the coachee does not feel a connection and a confidence in what this person is going to guide them through. I mean, a coach isn't going to tell you what to do. They shouldn't tell you what to do. That's a consultant. A coach is going to cultivate the answers with you and co-create the solutions with you. But the transformation is always on the coachee. So there is a lot there's a lot more of this, am I making the right decision with the right coach, that's actually wrapped up in the mindset of the person looking for the coaching. When I hire coaches, I look at everything, but I'm somebody who comes from a practice. I worked at a bank. So, my background it has set me up to be thorough in my exploration. And so that's what I do. But not everybody does that. Sometimes people just have a great chemistry call, and they can go where they need to go with this coach, even if they don't have credentials. I mean, one of the best coaches I ever worked with never even went to college and had no coaching credentials, and helped me make, some big transformational moves in my business that in hindsight, it sounds almost insane that I worked with him, but
yeah,
he asked me some really powerful questions, and it triggered something in me. And that's ultimately what coaching's about, is to, trigger a different way, and to help people stick with it and explore and not get stuck in the ruts that they already know. Pattern interruption and really breaking down the goals and accountability. That's all part of what the coaching experience is like. And, people can achieve that experience a variety of ways with, people of all different types of preparedness and so forth. But, I think most people who get coached, maybe have a few things that they lean on when they're evaluating coaching. And I know I have certain things that I look for, but I think it's really unique to each individual person. And then also, to not be afraid to say, like, this is not working and I need to break up. And that can be hard things. Like, we don't even like breaking up with hairdressers and doctors. Right. We just sort of disappear.
Yeah.
So, like, every coach has to be, is prepared for those possible conversations, because if it's not working for the coachee, it's not really working for the coach probably either. So it's really, the coachee should always feel that if it doesn't end up going the way they had hoped, that they can cut bait and do something else.
Right. And no harm, no foul.
No.
If it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And if everybody sort of goes into the relationship like that, then it's all good. Just listening to you, I mean, the thing that keeps popping in my head is like I feel like everybody honestly could benefit from having a coach because it's somebody who is invested in your success, whatever that means. But it's also somebody that's not like your family member or your best friend or even like a business colleague. It's somebody that I think is very objective. And I just, I think to myself, wow, like everybody could truly use a coach and you just have to find the right one, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, and I've often wondered, like, why does that feel that way? But I think it kind of comes down to the complexity of life. Now, for most
Yeah.
people, when you're in your 20s, you're just happy you can keep the wheels on the bus and get your bills paid and have a job and you're adulting. And when
Yeah.
you start to complicate your life with relationships and bigger jobs and houses and marriages and things, it does get complicated and it can be overwhelming. And I think, you add that on top of things like, the explosion of media and the internet and all the things that we've gone through as a society over the last 30 years. Plus you add like a pandemic on top of it. I mean, this is
Yeah.
pretty
Forget
overwhelming.
it.
And so it's
Yeah.
not something I don't know that we all needed it. The society needed it as much 20 or 30 years ago. But I think the fact that we have a pretty different cultural experience now and business experience warrants it. And we also have a lot more mobility in some areas of business that you don't have those longevity of relationships. Early part of my career, I had, more longevity in some places. The leadership is more in place for longer periods of time, that you might have more of the informal mentorship and sponsorship and things like that. And now a lot of that's gotten really formalized. And in some ways it's a little bit corporatized and maybe not even as authentic as it should be. So thankfully, the world of coaching has become, more widely accepted and people know about it. And, I feel fortunate because back in, I don't know, probably the, late, maybe 1995 or so, I worked with a coach and I didn't really know what he was. I just sort of, I signed up for this interesting course, which was amazing. And I still have work that I have used from that experience to, in my current life. I still use some of that work. It was so important to me, but I didn't really understand that that's what he was, a coach, until I was in that event and then working with him afterwards. So we've come a long way in terms of what people understand coaching to be.
Yeah.
And we also have a lot more coaches out there. And I think that, it kind of warrants back to, evaluation of coaches and picking people and making sure that you do some homework before you get in a partnership. It can certainly be transformational, certainly has been for me.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I want to talk to you for another half an hour. Like, I want to know, in what areas have you really transformed? I think that could be very powerful for people. I think that there's so much to talk about. And so I definitely want to have you come back where we can explore some of
Yeah,
those
love to.
things. But yeah, and I just think that you have given such great and practical advice, and it just comes through to me, and I hope to everybody listening too, how incredibly caring and intelligent you are. And, I think anybody that works with you gets the benefit of all of your experience and all of your insights. And I just think that anybody who does work with you is really lucky. So,
Thank you so much.
honestly, Stacey, I just think that you are great. And I'm so happy that you're in my circle and my network.
Likewise.
Yeah, no, it's so good. So thank you so much. And what I would love for you to be able to do is to just let people know where they can, get in touch with you, find you, read some of the stuff that you put out there. So where can that happen?
So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, probably the easiest to find there because my last name is strangely spelled, and I'm sure that'll be in the show notes.
Yep.
But I also have my website, StaceyStaaterman.com. And those are two good places. You'll see me, I publish regularly with Forbes, and I've been in Men's Health a few times. So you may see me out there other places, but LinkedIn for me is one of my social media homes, and my website has always got a lot of information. So, and I love connecting with people. So please, find me there and do send me a connection request and let me know that you've heard the podcast.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And, please keep doing all the great work that you're doing and help people to get to wherever it is that they need to go now and, after this whole pandemic. And I hear that there's another wave coming. So, it's a little disheartening, but the world is different now, and it may be so for years to come. And that's the reality. And we need to adjust to that.
But there's great opportunity. So much. There's great opportunity. It's going to be okay. We're all in it together.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks so much, Adrienne.
Well, thank you. And we will talk soon.
All right. Take care.